What up, Inspired? Welcome to Spire Metro Books. I'm Carlos. Today we have for you the largest book haul on YouTube? Possibly. I don't know. Let me know in the description below how many books you think came in. This is all the books that I've gathered so far this year. Some of them are holdovers from Christmas that arrived, in 2021 and in the new year. And let's get right into it because quite a bit. We're going to start off first with the Kindle books. I picked up the first 6 books of the Dresden Files. It is a series of Dresden. He's a wizard, urban fantasy, top notch. Jim Butcher does an outstanding job. So I picked up Stormfront, Full Moon, Grave Perils, Summer Night. I'm on Death Masks is the current book I'm going through, and then after Death Mask is Blood Rights. So we'll see where it keeps going from there. So far, I'm just enjoying it. And then I do a lot of audiobooks. Sometimes I'll listen to the audiobooks and pick up the physical copy. Sometimes I'll cut in between depending on like where I am. If I'm in the car, I'm listening to the audiobooks. And then so first book is Six Sacred Swords by Andrew Rowe. He's one of my favorite self-published authors. It's set in the same universe, but it's a different series than Arcane Ascension. More on that later. The next book is The Martian by Andy Weir. I had already owned the second book that I picked up at a used bookstore for a good deal, and so I wanted to get the first book. Jade City by Fonda Lee. It's a crime novel in a fantasy world. And I've just seen over BookTube that Fonda Lee does an outstanding job, so I picked up that. Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. The Red Rising series is one of my most favorite series that I've enjoyed reading since I've been back as a constant reader and consumer of books. The Iron Gold is so dark, so much fun. Darrow is just an awesome character, and his cast of friends around him, the Howlers, and with Servo and Mustang, and it's just such a core group of friends. You know, and then Dark Age is the last available in the series so far. In looking for the next book coming out. And then Audible had a deal for a bundle called Space Assassins, and I am always on the lookout for a series that combines sci-fi and fantasy. And so I picked up the bundle. The first book turned out to be a novella, about 120 to 140 pages. It's done by Scott Barron. I very much enjoyed it. It's a kind of a cross between Dresden, if he became a vampire, and then join the Howlers is what I like to is really apt kind of caricature of the first of the main character. But and then so book one novella is Interstellar Slayer. Book two is a full-fledged novel. Great big world building, awesome storyline, compelling characters. It's not the largest best book I've ever had the pleasure of enjoying, but man, a great summer read. You go watch a blockbuster movie and then you sit down and read this at night, man, you'll have a great weekend. But book two is called The Vespis Blade, and that is all my Kindle and Audible books. So let's get right into the physical copies. Back onto a man here, Andrew Rowe. This is The Torch That Ignites the Stars. This is book 3 in Arcane Ascension. The magic system in this series is just wonderful. It is a hard magic system based around runes, and the way you achieve the different magic that you're going to achieve is a just really well developed series of tower runs, and regionalities and unique effects that have a lot of depth to them. So if you enjoy hard magic systems and really delving into it, Book 3 is where he really gets into the nuts and bolts of that. So I picked that up because I had already read it on the Kindle when it first dropped last year. All right. And then here we have the books that I'm going to be covering is mainly fantasy, science fiction, and like business, books. Those are three main categories. That's what you're going to see on this channel. As we continue to grow, you're going to see reviews and content based around those kind of pillars. And so here we have Viktor E. Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. This is, a really compelling book. It's about the story of a Holocaust survivor as they got through the events in that time frame, and what is your purpose? Why do you live? And this is one of those type of books that you can read over and over again and always have something new to take from it. All right. And then I picked up a whole bunch of the Pendragon series. My buddy Scott in IRL, he is a big fan of this one from when he was a kid. I have two young boys, and so I started picking up the hard copies. And as you can see, got book 3 here, I believe, The Never War. And I thought it was a hard copy, and it came in as a paper, so that was unfortunate. Got Reality Bug. This is book 4. Got The Rivers of Zada, book 6. Supposed to be just real fun middle grade series. The Quill and Games, book 7. Book 8, The Pilgrims of Rain. Let's see. Raven Rise is book 9. This one was just a good quality version, so it came without the dust cover. And book 10, The Soldiers of Hala. So, looking forward to getting into that with the boys. We are currently reading the Alcatraz series, Alcatraz and the Evil Librarians by Brandon Sanderson, on book 2 of that. And then every other book, we've been going through Harry Potter. And so we finished Sorcerer's Stone, the illustrated edition, because the younger boy, enjoys looking at the pictures a little bit more. And then, so looking forward to continuing all of those. And then once we're done with that, we'll move over to the Pendragon series. All right. Picked up Jim Butcher, The Aeronauts Windlass. This is the non-urban fantasy. This is book 1 in the Cinderspire series. And so, looking forward to getting that once I'm done with Dresden. The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann. This is a talking about business and running your business with a kind of like a charity element to it. Doing the right thing for the right reasons, and how that could actually make your business better, more profitable. Your Marketing Sucks by Mark Stevens. Supposed to be a fun book delving into marketing and how you can improve it. Then I got a couple of books based off the founder's writings. Got Common Sense by Thomas Paine, and The Federalist Papers by Alexander Hamilton, Jay Adams, some of the other former founders and presidents. This is a really awesome looking book. It's called Without Permission: How the 21st Century Will Be Made, Not Managed by Alexis Ohanian. Autographed copy in here. And I don't know what this book is about. I know it's a marketing book. So really interested to get in that sometime down the road. Earlier this year, I read Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. 1984 was one of my all-time classic, dystopian society favorite books from reading back in high school. And so really wanted to get into some of the other books that came out with that. Really interesting concepts, and especially since I'm back into reading so hard, it's kind of interesting how that storyline plots where the firefighters actually are book burners, in this dystopian society, and the ramifications of that kind of life. And let's see, pick these up used. The Player of Games by Ian M. Banks and Matter. Watch Moid on Death Media Cult, Media Death Cult, here on the YouTubes, and they're actually going through the Culture series now as a read along, and I saw these on the shelf, when I went there, and I was like, let me pick them up. I have book 1 on order. It hasn't arrived yet. The Phibius something. And it really just interested in picking those up, getting into it down the way. Hopefully I could get that started before they finish the entire 10-book series. All right. I enjoyed Scott Barron's book so much. I went ahead and the audio versions, I went ahead and picked up the physical copies. Really good quality printing for self-published. And like I said, this is the Interstellar Slayers, super thin. And the Vespis Blade. As you can see, it's much more of an actual novelle. Some people look at the cover and they're like, oh, that's Assassin's Creed and in space. And it just doesn't read that way to me. But very, very fun. Again, getting into some of the dystopians. We got Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I'm going through the audiobook now. About 70% through. It's quite a chunker, and I had seen the movies. They're not very great, but they kind of get the point across. But I don't believe they actually finished the story from book 1, so looking forward to finishing that up and then moving on to some other material. Picked up The Red Wall by Brian Jakes. You could correct me in the comments. This is a classic fantasy novel, and so I saw it available for a good deal, so I picked that up. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I've been wanting to pick up some of the books that I've read in the past that I really enjoyed. I loved back in high school going over this book, and the relationship of the family all being on a the same plantation or same plot of land with different households. I really love that dynamic, and then the story of how things tend to not work out for the main character. So I wanted to pick that up. If I remember that correctly, it's been a while since I've read it. Then On Writing Well, I'm always for communicating in better ways, just as I did there. And so On Writing Well goes for business, work, how you speak. I'm not a writer, but I definitely wanted to pick this book up when I saw it for such a good deal, and looking to always improve my ways of communication. The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch, professor at Carnegie Mellon. Again, this was on a reading list of excellent books, and so I picked it up when I had a chance. Don't know too much about that one. All right. Dan Brown's Angels and Demon Illustrated Edition. Again, this book was like $2, and so I just snagged it up. I remember watching the movies, and thought that would just be cool, and so much value there. Rich Nation, Poor Nation, Why Some Nations Prospers, Why Others Fail by Robert Janetsky. Don't know too much about this. but picked it up. What If by Randall Munroe. Um, this is a book that just asks a whole bunch of hypotheticals, and my understanding gives answers to them, um, based around science. So just fun, educational kind of read. All right. Here we have R.A. Salvatore's The Two Swords. This part of the Hunter's Blade trilogy. Um, it's set in the Forgotten Realms world. I know of R.A. Salvatore, the creator of Drizzt, the dark elf, Dro from of fame, and so just good deal on this one. So I picked it up. I don't have the first two books, so it will be a while before I start into this. But excuse me, but wanted to go ahead and pick it up when I get a chance, and eventually I'll jump into that. All right, we have Looptail, Bruce Poon Tip. How one company changed the world by reinventing business. Don't know anything about this, but being with my group of business books, and I'll eventually get to it. All right. Start by Jon Acuff. I've already read some of Jon Acuff. Really good book. I believe it was Finish was the book that I read. And so he has Start, Finish, and another book called Do Over that I don't have. Finish was good. And basically it was talking through like productivity and, just pushing through and getting anything done, even if it's not perfect. Just because the rewards and the gains that you get and from the experience is even better. And so I'm assuming that Start's something similar, and looking forward to getting that eventually. Driven to Delight, delivering world-class customer experience the Mercedes-Benz way, by Joseph McKelly. Talking about how those guys and gals at Benz do what they do in terms of treating their customers, and Mercedes is such an excellent brand, especially their engineering over the years. So we'll see what that holds. Let's get back in this fantasy here. Brandon Sanderson's Warbreaker, and is this a signed copy? It is not. I think I have like 7 copies of Brandon Sanderson books. You could go through his website directly, and all the copies that come signed. And actually met him at Dragon Con year before last. Such a nice guy. Him and the artist for Warbreaker. I had not read, nor did I know who he was at the time that I was there with a group of friends. They wanted to meet him. They were listening. They were playing Mistborn on the audiobook on the drive there to Atlanta, and so after I picked up a poster and had him sign it, just because I enjoy fantasy, even though I didn't know anything about it at the time, and then went and listened to Warbreaker, and then picked up the book because it was just a great story. Just an awesome story. My number one recommendations for starting the Cosmere, which is the multiverse that all of Brandon Sanderson's books are in. And so I would highly, highly, highly recommend. All right. Let's just get these chunks out of the way here. So wanted to get through some of the I wanted to get some of the books for movies that I enjoyed, and I enjoyed The Maze Runner, and so I picked up the series. I saw that they were at the used bookstore. Scorched Trails, Death Cure, Fever Code, and Kill Order by James Dashner. they had like two or three of the books at the used bookstore, and really sweet deal. Picked them up, and then had to go online to some of the other bookstores on there and find other used copies. So I just recently got all of those together. But I also want to do some of the some of the other movies that I've enjoyed, especially as kids, and for those that don't know how I am with movies, it doesn't have to be a great movie to be a good movie for me. Just be what you are. If you're, a popcorn eating flick, if you're, a mystery or a drama or an action packed or just a wonderful, well done film, just, do what you are, and I'm happy and will enjoy it. Les Miserables, I think is how you pronounce it in French. Les Miserables. All right, by Victor Hugo. This chunker, that boy is definitely going to be not anytime soon, but it's a classic, and I wanted to pick it up. The History of Puerto Rico by R.A. Van Middledijk. My background, I come from a mixed family, and there's some Puerto Rican in there, and in my heritage, I've lived in Puerto Rico, and been back many times and visit my grandparents, and so I wanted to pick up a little bit of history about it. Measure What Matters by John Doerr, or Dewar. Don't know too much about this book. I believe that it has to do with looking into key performance indicators, KPIs, and the role of each job. How does the business make those decisions and deciding what's significant? Because there's a lot of businesses out there that will take in data points that are not actually the results or don't actually provide results in any meaningful way, whether it be to the culture or the profits, costs, and things like that. So supposedly a good book. Can't wait to get in that. All right. The Tanning of America: How Hip Hop Created a Culture That Rewrote the Rules of the New Economy. This is by Steve Stout. Don't know too much about this. I'm sure this has to do with demographics inside of America and the effects on the marketing and business side effects on that. And so really interesting, and looking forward to that. All right, Factory Man by Beth Macy. This is a like an autobiography kind of setup about a furniture maker, and I think it basically goes over a story of like small business and the manufacturing. So we'll see how that goes. Not gonna get to that one anytime soon, but interesting. All right, The Boom Boom Book by Michael Ryan. Says, don't love the company can't love you back. So yeah, I've seen this on a bunch of business lists as a good read, and sometimes these smaller business books, they they kind of just get right to the point, and have something that's usually meaningful to say, if they're not some of those books out there that are just the start of getting into their system, their funnel. But we'll find out what that one's about. Right. The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker is one of the classic reads in terms of the business world. One of the big guys that was at the consulting level, and so we'll take a look at that. Get one more of these business book out of the way here and get back into some of this fantasy. All right, Simon Sinek, Eaters Eat Last. I heard of Simon from his TED Talk when he was promoting the book Why, and so I've heard the phrase from my military experience that eats last, um, and so he had to start with Why, and I hadn't heard too much about this book, and so find out what's in there at some point. Let's see here. I picked up Alastair Reynolds, House of Suns. Alastair Reynolds is one of Moid from Media Death Cult's favorite authors, and so I saw this hardback on the bookshelf of the bookstore, and so I was like, it's good enough for Moid. It's gonna be good enough for your boy. So went ahead and picked that up, and I believe that particular book, House of Suns, is not in any specific series. So as a standalone, I kind of looked at that to be able to experience some of his writing. The Quantum Magician. This is by Derek Kunskin. This was a little bit difficult to read, just because some of the language in there. I don't know if it was German, roots or whatnot, and talking about magic system that was tied to the quantum physics. Sometimes a little bit to follow, but overall it was a really good story. There's relationships that develop in there. There's a little bit more character work than your typical like hard fantasy book. Really interesting how the main character, he's like not all powerful, but at the same time can just do amazing things. So you couldn't just rely on magic, quote unquote, to to kind of get you out of any sticky situation. So not a bad book at all. All right, we have Sebastian de Castell, Traitor's Blade. Got Traitor's Blade, Night Shadow, which is book 2. Get these in order. Saint's Blood, which is book 3. And Tyrant's Throne. This is all part of the Great Coat series. Kind of like, Three Musketeers kind of vibes. Read Traitor's Blade already. Really, really fun. A little bit darker than I kind of thought it was going to be. I thought it would all just going to be, kind of like fun, jovial, and, maybe a little bit of romance in there. And, no, kind of dark, darker than what I thought it would be. No, it's not Joe Abercrombie, level dark, but, compared to Three Musketeers, movie version, classic storytelling version, because I have not read Three Musketeers yet. It definitely made it more interesting. Main character has kind of like a revenge plot going through the whole thing. So don't want to spoil too much, but I would definitely recommend Traitor's Blade and the Great Coats. So far, looking forward to getting through the rest of that. All right, and so now I've picked up some Orson Scott Card Ender's Game. I've seen the movie. Haven't read the book, but I have a pretty good understanding of the plot. Really, really, really enjoyed the movie, and wanted to pick up that. So before I got Ender's Game, they had I saw these at the bookstore, and this was the prequel series, and this is the very start of it. It is Earth Unaware, and this is by Orson Scott Card, and then also with Aaron Johnston, assisted, co-authored it. Earth Awakens and Earth Afire. So all these take place before Ender's Game. Then I think there's some more books in that series before Ender's Game happened, and then after Ender's Game, the storyline continues along two different series, And I picked up Children of the Fleet. So this is in one of those, and this was a signed copy. Let's see, get that. Really cool. Children of the Fleet. This was the one I've had longer than the other, so glad to finally have those. Then really good deal on the hardback of The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. This is book 3 in the Liza Locke Lamora series. I haven't read any of Scott Leach's work, but I've heard that it is just outstanding. So, hopefully one day I'll pick up the rest of the series. Hopefully find it as like a good deal with those. Highly doubt it. Maybe have to do the paperbacks on those ones. All right. Here we have Blitz Scaling by Reid Hoffman and Chris Ye. Reid Hoffman is the co-founder of LinkedIn, and talking about scaling your businesses. Seen a lot of this on business lists, so I picked that up. Then we have Spark: Insights into the Insight to Growing Brands by Patty Rangappa. I don't know too much about this one at all. Seemed like a really good deal, and I don't know if much about this author, but really excited. I always love getting into branding books and finding out how business is communicated themselves and position themselves. The Design of Future Things by Donald A. Norman. This was a book that was recommended to me from a good friend, Anthony, and so I saw it on a deal and I snatched it up. But this has to do with product development. Let's see. We have Doing More with Teams, Bruce Biasecki. Don't know too much about this. Judging by the title and the category of book that was in, has to do with corporate teams. So we'll find out what that one's about at some later point in time. Here we have a small little book, Effective Delegation of Authority by Hassan Al-Wasman. I just remember listening to the audiobook on this on a deal, and really enjoyed it, and it was such an inexpensive book, so real quick, and so I picked it up. Then we have Rich Cohen, The Fish That Ate the Whale, The Life and Times of America's Banana King. One of the key business writers and kind of like thought leaders is Seth Godin, and he had a quote that related to this in another book of his, and so I went ahead and just noted that and made sure to pick up. I can't remember if it was in This Is Marketing. I believe it was in This Is Marketing, but it might have been in Tribes. So I went and picked that up. Find out a little bit more about that. So the reason why I picked up so many Jim Butcher books on Kindle was because my boy Alex Nieves, check out his BookTube channel. He's outstanding. He's just getting into it, and he's loved the Dresden Files books, and I saw a bunch of them at the bookstore. All the hardbacks, they were like ranging between $4 and like $6. They don't have them all, but they had a good selection, so I snatched up all they had. I can see why the older books are quite expensive. And then they just released Stormfront in hardback on a new print run, so I had to pay full price for this one, but it the price of that was so much better than what the old books are going for. So I went ahead and grabbed that. And but I've already been reading it, and it's just great. So we have Stormfront, we have Small Favor, and these are probably going to be out of order because I've mixed them up here. We got White Knight, Ghost Story, Cold Days, Skin Game, and then now these are the newer releases. Peace Talks, I believe both of them came out this past year, and Battleground, and we have Proven Guilty. I believe there's 15 or 16 books in the series right now, and a couple of like anthology of short stories. Turncoat, and Changes. And Changes is the one that I'm most looking forward to. The BookTube community has kind of like blessed that's why you read up to the, I think it's the 9th book in the series. All right, now I've got a couple classics here. So this is F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby. Seen the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. Read that when I was in high school. Reread it again a couple years ago. Listening to the audiobook version, and it was just a good story. So I made sure to pick it up. As Man Thinketh by James Allen. This is one of those philosophical books. They're just, you could reread it a bunch of times and take something new from it every time. Definitely recommended. My favorite nonfiction author is Ryan Holiday, and he is a leader in Stoic philosophy and Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius is one of the quintessential thought leaders on that. And Meditations is the book that I see that Holiday recommends a lot and reads a lot. So I went ahead and picked this up. I haven't got into it yet, but it's close. And then, as with Fahrenheit 451, went ahead and picked up Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and got through that earlier this year. It was definitely different than like 1984 vibes. This one I took a lot more similarities in terms of how it is nowadays here, in now modern times. With the pervasiveness of this like feel good culture, and that is kind of like removing some critical thought. And seems like a lot less conversations tend to be having in different corners of the mass media. So definitely enjoyed that. Still quite a bit left here, so we'll see if we can get through these a little more quickly. We have My Father's Business by Cal Turner Jr. I believe this is Dollar General's founder. So, The Compass of Pleasure: How Our Brains Make Fatty Foods, Organisms, Exercise, Marijuana, Generosity, Vodka, Learning, and Gambling. Feels so good. It's quite a mouthful. David J. Linden. So, interesting motivations there inside the mind. Here we have Collective Genius, The Art and Practice of Leading Innovation, by multiple authors, including Linda A. Hill and Greg Brando, Emily Truelove, and Kent Lineback. Don't know anything about this book. Really cool cover. So, all right. Here we have Daniel H. Pink, Drive, Daniel H. Pink is a great author. I read his book, To Sell is Human, and I enjoyed that. You could see I had so many sections of the book where I just dog-eared. Normally, I don't destroy my books that way. When I'm typically reading nonfiction, I'll have a notepad, and I'll jot down the notes of that, and then I take those single page notes and I rewrite them into a notebook, and that process of rewriting helps me remember the lessons that are learned in there, and every blue moon I'll flip through that notebook to find the inspiration. Um, but I was on vacation and didn't have anything to write with when I went through that book. But I really very much enjoyed his To Sell is Human. A lot of great lessons in it. More of like a lot of sourced documentation on that. And so find out what's inside Drive. All right, next book. Speak American 2. Your guide to building powerful brands in the new heartland. This is part of the country that I'm in. Is somewhere in the Midwest South region of the United States, and this book kind of is targeting them as a demographic. So we'll find out what's in that. The Real Madmen, The Renegades of Madison Avenue, and the Golden Age of Advertising by Andrew Cracknell. If you don't know anything about the Madmen, there was a great series. I think it was on A&E. But those are talking about back when commercials were the big and best way to spend your marketing dollars. There's a lot of power in the New York advertising market. Still is, and basically, to me, advertising is incredible. If you look at how many industries are held up by advertising dollars, pretty much all of television, radio, podcasts, are held up, by these advertising and promotion types, and then that's now been used. That was talking about back in the day. That's now been used to build, Facebook and Google into the pillars that they are now, and so to me, it's just incredible. So always interested in that kind of stuff, and hopefully to get a bit out of that. Let's see. Let's get back into fantasy here. So we have Promise of Blood by Brian McKillen. Picked up the whole Powder Mage trilogy in trade paperback. We have the Crimson Campaign and the Autumn Republic. And so far I've gotten through the first two books. Really enjoyed them. It's like a flintlock fantasy with a magic system that's based around essentially snorting the gunpowder. But really complicated and father-son kind of storyline, and friends storylines inside there in terms of the plot, and very much enjoying that. Probably finish out the Autumn Republic by the end of the year here. And then we have The Dwarves by Marcus Heights, and book 2 is The War of the Dwarves. And this series is, my understanding, it is like the quintessential books about dwarves. I understand that it's entitled that, but I mean, like, just the culture and the depth of the world around it. My understanding is this is it. I believe they're originally in German, if I'm not mistaken, and so brought over here to the States. So really looking, probably going to do a buddy read with a buddy of mine on that. And so we got the first two books, and the series continues. I believe there's 5 or 6 books in that series. So looking forward to that. All right, we have Michael Savage, Trickle Down Tyranny. Not really expecting too much from that. Brian Kilmeade, Sam Houston, and Alamo Avengers. I got these both. They were on a super sweet deal right then, so that's why I got them. Brand Aid by Larry G. Line. This has to do with reputation inside your business. And 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. That's one of the like classics reads recommended on team building inside of a business, so that's why I picked that up. All right, Taming the Tiger Within by Thich Nhat Hanh, I believe. I apologize for all the names I butchered in the show. This is talking basically about Buddhist belief systems and working through having control of your emotions. So this was a really good book. Content Inc. How entrepreneurs use content to build massive audiences and create radically successful business by Joe Paluzzi. The audiobook, I believe Joe narrated it himself, and it was just, man, the guy has a lot of energy, and there were some good lessons in there, but this was one of those ones where I didn't have my setup that I typically have when I'm doing a nonfiction book, so I wanted to go ahead and get the hard copy and take a look at some of those key points that he had in there. All right. Exactly What to Say, The Magic Words of Influence and Impact by Phil M. Jones. This is talking about how improving your communication through the actual words that you say, and how some of those words have meaning. Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock. This is talking about ancient civilization, stuff that's not necessarily inside the norms of agreed upon science because it predates the Sumerian era. Really just interesting stuff. If you're into any of that, there's tons of it. Wutepla Beke, I think is what it's called, a find in Turkey that's like 11,000 years old or something like that. Don't know too much about all that, but it's always nice to kind of open up creativity in your mind and stuff like that. So Thank You Economy by Gary Vaynerchuk. I read Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk and Gary V. Seen him in conference before. Really hyper energy guy, man. That's super motivating. He has some great ideas. It's worked out really well for the many businesses he started, and so picked up his Thank You Economy book. Rich Dad Poor Dad. This is, in the top recommended books for people getting started. Story by Robert Kiyosaki. But basically the story he has his real dad who's a really successful professor in Hawaii, and then he has his best friend's dad who teaches him lessons about how finances and the world works and running businesses and things like that. So that way he can end up becoming a success, and he's turned that whole concept into an amazing business. Gives out some good advice. Right, another Daniel H. Pink, A Whole New Mind. Said earlier how much I loved the other book, and so saw this. I was like, I'm picking that up. Must buy author. Guerrilla Marketing Remix by J. Conrad Levinson and Jeannie Levinson. Guerrilla marketing is kind of like the way of promoting and selling in very obscure kind of ways. This is like the kind of stuff that you'll see like promotion items like a crosswalk, or they'll take over a bus stop and those kinds of things. So really chunker here and see what kind of ideas that they have in that. Marketing AI, from Automation to Revenue Performance Marketing by Greg Jordan and Stephen Roberts. Don't know anything about this book, but eventually I'll get to it. Jeff Rose has a YouTube channel and he promotes the Soldier of Finance. I saw this at the used bookstore and thought I'd pick it up. He's a CEFP, so financial advice, a certified financial provider, finance provider, and so take a look at him. It's really some interesting stuff he has out there. Different, Escaping the Competitive Herd by Young Mi Moon. Don't know too much about this book, but we'll find out. The Mesh, Lisa Gansky. Don't know anything about this book as well, but it has a Seth Godin blurb on the front, and Daniel H. Pink is the main blurb on the top. It says, Lisa makes compelling case for the new competitive logic of sharing and shows how to build not just a single company, but an entire business ecosystem around this concept. If you want to understand the future, or maybe help create it, read this book. So, I'm going to read the book, I guess. All right. Fascinate by Sally Hogshead, or Hogshead. Don't know anything about this book as well. Again, this was all in that same business book haul, that super sweet deal. So grab that. Bob Lutz, Straight Talk on Leadership, Icons and Idiots. Bob Lutz was the VP of GM, General Motors, and although I really do not like this cover, I've seen it on a bunch of recommended lists, so really interested in kind of getting a hold of that. 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. This is a highly recommended book on the Business BookTube. Talking about, I think some people walk in thinking, how do I get down to working only 4 hours a week? But to me, the main takeaway from my understanding of the book is really just how to work differently in a more efficient manner. To get more of your life back and control of your life. But that's that. The Third Wave by Steve Case. Entrepreneur's Vision of the Future. Don't know too much about this book, but looking forward to get into it. And then again with my my boys, we read the Percy Jackson books and got into the Trials of Apollo. We read book 1, and I guess there's Percy Jackson has a little bit older, like somewhere between middle grade and YA series, and it starts off with The Lost Hero, so I picked that up. Again, a good quality version, so it didn't have the dust scepter. The Son of Neptune, The Mark of Athena, The House of Hades, and it finishes off with The Blood of Olympus. So picked up that whole series. That will starting to run out of room over here. All right, I already have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, so I went ahead and picked up Star Sight. My understanding, Brandon Sanderson just had his weekly update, and he's on the 3rd draft of book 3 in that. Title isn't official yet, so looking forward to getting to that series after I finish up the Cosmere. I've already gotten through all of the Mistborn books that are out, and began the Stormlight Archive with The Way of Kings. I read Warbreaker, and so I got to get into Elantris and um, read the first graphic novel, White Sand. So finish up Elantris, get into some of the short stories, and then finish out that Stormlight Archive. I'll probably take it slow on the Stormlight Archive, so that way I could time it when book 5 comes out of that. Business at the Speed of Now by John M. Bernard. Don't know anything about that. Good to Great by Jim Collins. Jim Collins wrote Built to Last, and this is both of those works have been highly, highly recommended, so I went and picked that up. The Long Tail, While Future of Business is Selling Less of More by Chris Anderson. Don't know anything about that book, but pick that up. Really interested in getting into this book. This is Samsung Rising, inside the story of South Korea's giant that set out to beat Apple and conquer tech by Jeffrey Kane. I'm a big Samsung fan. Looked at a little bit at university as I was going through my MBA program on some of the case studies around Samsung and the development team. So really looking forward to that. Jack Welch and Susie Welch with Winning. This is a highly recommended book. Jack Welch is kind of like a visionary, and so really, really looking forward to getting into that book. The Crowdsourced Performance Review, How to Use the Power of Social Recognition to Transform Employee Performance by Eric Mosley. So don't know too much about this book, but performance reviews are always, one of those kind of like necessary things, and not always necessarily done right. And if you don't have the, if they're not doing anything with those meetings, then kind of like what's the point? So interested in that, but not a high read on my list here. Learn or Die, Using Science to Build the Leading Edge Learning Organization by Edward D. Hess. Seen this recommended on a few places. So get to that. Curation Nation, How to Win in a World of Consumers Are Creators by Stephen Rosenbaum. Interesting. All right, this is Hustle by Neil Patel, Patrick Vlaskovs, and Jonas Koffler. Again, I apologize, I'm butchering these names. Neil Patel, he's a really, really big in the SEO space, and so interesting, what he would have in that book there. Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. I've seen this book recommended by at other corporate events as a read, and so I went and picked it up. Fortunately, it doesn't have a dust cover on it, but that's okay. Content is still there. Youth Nation, Building Remarkable Brands in a Youth-Driven Culture by Matt Britton. Don't know too much about this book, but really, really interesting cover design there. Mobile Influence, New Power of Consumer by Chuck Martin. So good looking book. Had a deal on the audiobook last year, and so thought I'd pick up the cover on that. Managing Brand Equity by David Aker. This is a autographed copy. Fortunately, this book's been marked up with highlighter at the same time. It's awesome because you could go back and see somebody else's kind of see what they thought were main points taken out of the book. But this is like go-to. David is a go-to in the brand world. So looking forward to that. And then we'll be finishing up here with Brando Sando. Picked up Steelheart, Firefight, and book 3, Calamity in the Reckoner series. This is superhero YA. Brandon Sanderson. It's not inside the Cosmere. And with that, no, it's going to be a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. Turns out with the Kindle and the Audible books and all of the books that we just went through together, that the total was 147 books, I believe, if I counted right. And so, this is the next, couple years of reading and consuming. And so this probably, I could almost guarantee, won't stop me from picking up more. But I am really looking forward to enjoying this. So if you have recommendations out of anything you've seen here in terms of what to raise in the priority list, please let me know. I'm definitely be down in the comments, and looking forward to seeing more of you. All right. Thank you, and we out.